I was going to do a Why I Like episode on StarFox Adventures because, yeah, I like this game. But if I did that, it would probably be a bit of a boring episode because it would probably just be full of stuff like how the puzzles are fun and the controls are great, the visuals are amazing. But the thing is, this game generally got positive reviews, so why do you need me to tell you the same things that others have been saying? Why am I even covering this title? Well, for those that don't know, StarFox Adventures is a spin-off game of the on-rail shooter classic that this time round tries to focus on being a third-person adventure. Not everyone likes this game, but that isn't really the problem. Everyone has their own likes and dislikes. But here's the catch. A lot of this game's haters are coming from StarFox fans of all things. Kind of odd, don't you think? Every once in a while, I come across a video on YouTube that just pans this game like crazy, but even after watching those videos, I still don't know why they hate it so much. A lot of these people don't seem to clearly articulate just what it is exactly they don't like about this game. Well, other than the universal complaint that it's not primarily an on-rail shooter. But this confuses me, because wanting this game to be an on-rail shooter is like saying you want Mario Party to be a side-scroller platformer. I mean, that kind of misses the whole point of having the spin-off game in the first place. So I just kind of forgot about it for a while until recently a channel called Re-Res did a video on StarFox Adventures. It was at this point that I now was very intrigued, because usually Shane, the host of Re-Res, tends to be very good at clearly explaining strengths and weaknesses of games in a way that is coherent. On this channel there are two very prominent shows, Positives and Negatives. Positives focuses on taking bad games in which Shane has to then try to find four positive aspects of said game, whereas Negatives is the opposite, where he has to take a good game and try to find four negative things to say about it. StarFox Adventures was given the Negatives treatment, which is actually good because that implies that Shane liked the game. Unfortunately, this was one instance where he kind of changed the premise of the show, because it turns out that he doesn't like this game, and in addition to that was going to proceed to find four negative aspects about it. Apparently, his excuse for why he's justified for doing this is because IGN gave the game a positive review back in 2002 when it first came out, whatever. It's his right to do that. It's his channel. He can do with it whatever he wants. It's just that I simply don't see eye to eye with Shane on this one. So, like with any immature, nerdy internet content creator, I'm going to counter-argue Shane's criticism. Yeah, I know, welcome to my channel. But before we begin, I want to be clear by stating that StarFox Adventures is not my most favorite game on the GameCube. I think it's got its fair share of problems, like how the combat was shallow and too easy, and the cutscenes were cheesy and immature. And I expected Shane to complain about those same issues, but instead he went on to complain about the vehicles, of all things, which was his first negative.
So my first big problem with this game is that the vehicle sequences really suck. They feel really short, they feel kind of imprecise, and it never feels like you're playing a real experience. Every fight sequence I played just felt really vanilla and cookie cutter. Nothing ever had a challenge and it just felt really boring. And on top of that, there are other vehicle sequences in the game, like this one sequence you're seeing here where Fox rides down this big avalanche-y snow thing with a bike, and the whole thing just sucks. It never feels good, it never feels fair.
It is here that one of my worst fears became a reality. This negative was inaccurate to my personal experience with the game. He said that the controls were imprecise, but just to make sure, I decided to start up StarFox 64 to do a comparison, and I found the controls to be very similar. So, does he also not like the controls in StarFox 64? I don't know. And as for the challenge, sure, it starts off easy, but it does ramp up in difficulty to the point where you have to evenly time your speed boosts in order to sync up with crushing doors and other hazards. There's enemy ships and bombs everywhere, and on top of that, you have to collect enough golden rings in order to lower the planet's shields for re-entry, which increases with every level, until you reach the final course where you can't even miss a single golden ring. That can actually be quite tough. As for the snow speeder chase, well, believe it or not, I don't like it either, although not for the same reasons that Shane gave. bumping into enemies slow you down like crazy, and that can be frustrating at times. But the controls are fine. The snow speeder does exactly what you want it to do. The R-Wings controls are fine. They're silky, smooth, tight, and responsive. Just like the N64, in fact I would argue that it's better in Adventures because of the awesome GameCube analog stick versus the N64's wonky analog stick. Alright, on to the next negative.
In this game, they use a day and night cycle for no reason whatsoever.
That's not true. Many NPCs are asleep at night, which means you can't always talk to them. There was even this one mission where you needed to light some torches so that the dinosaurs that are afraid of the dark will reward you for your efforts. And even if these things did not exist, I still love the day-night cycles because of the atmosphere they convey. The tone changes, the music goes from bright and bouncy to tranquil and peaceful. This is good, especially in areas that you need variety, such as locations that you revisit often.
The only difference is that for whatever reason, dinosaurs fall asleep.
Oh, never mind, he actually points out a difference between day and night cycles.
Why did they do this? I can't even understand. You have to go through this one mission, and I remember going and getting a little bit lost, and by the time I got to the end of the stage, there was this dude I had to talk to, but he was asleep. So I was sat there thinking, well, what am I supposed to do? Here's what you do, everyone. You wait. You walk away from him and wait for like 5 minutes for the sun to rise, and then the goof wakes up. That's a thing they did in the game. There's no reason to do this.
What? You just stood there and waited? Why would you do that? Like with any other game that has a day and night cycle, if an NPC is temporarily unavailable, or a store is closed or something like that, are you just gonna stand there waiting for the sun to come up? There's other stuff to do, stuff that you need even prior to talking to the mammoth. Obviously, there are items you need to stock up on like health, magic, food for your pet dinosaur, but more importantly, there are things that needs to be dug up that are vital for progression, such as the alpine routes that you will need for the mammoth, and a hidden passageway that will take you to a chamber where you can upgrade your staff. By the time you have done all this, it would have taken about 5 minutes, which is also the time in length to each day and night cycle. And even if that fails, when you go into the hidden chamber and exit back to the surface, it always resets the time to midday. I have no sympathy for what Shane put himself through. All that waiting was completely unnecessary. And it was at this point that his criticisms started to feel like that they are based on incorrect scenarios and assumptions. Then he goes on about how the game is full of moments that wastes your time. He even complained about how it takes 2 hits to break a large wooden crate. I completely do not have a problem with this because it literally takes just under 1 second to break. And 99% of the time there's only health inside, which means you only need to break it when you need it. For the same reason, I will never complain that it takes Link from the Zelda series a couple of seconds to pick up and throw a container or rock to get an item, which by the way takes longer than breaking a crate in Adventures, because it almost takes no time at all. And like with Zelda, anything weaker than solid wood or stone only takes 1 hit to break.
Okay everybody, what's the worst thing you can do in a video game? Include a buddy system.
Oh, like Navi and Fi. I'm not being sarcastic, I agree. Tricky is really weird. Getting a grown man to play as a kid dinosaur, yeah, then the cutscenes can be annoying at times.
If ever you need me to come back, you just use my heal command, and I'll be right with you.
That dinosaur is one of the most irritating things I've ever had to deal with.
Wait, you mean the gameplay? What's wrong with it? He finds hidden secrets for you. He unlocks new areas with his different abilities. He even helps you with puzzles and combat.
See, in the game, there's these little things in the ground and stuff, and he can dig them up if you tell him to. But he won't do it unless he's hungry. No, you gotta feed him. And maybe he gets bored, so you have to play catch with him with a f***ing ball you find.
No, you don't have to. He's not going to stop helping you just because you don't play with him. And again, just like with the crates, it takes 1 second to feed him 5 mushrooms. And you'll never run out because the level designers have placed them everywhere. And this is only for getting him to open up new areas and find secrets. Asking him to follow you or telling him to stand on a button for a puzzle doesn't use up his hunger meter, at least to my knowledge.
The thing I hate the most about this game, the thing that just hurts me deep down, is that this game is the last Rare game to ever be released on a Nintendo home console. This game here is a complete, in my mind, letdown. Everything about it is wrong. It's not an original Rare property, and because of that, they didn't know what to do. They were trying to copy aspects from a game they didn't design.
Okay, so this statement is very strange to me because the gripe I have is saying how this game sucks because this is the last game that came from Rare before the Microsoft buyout. Okay, what does this have to do with the game itself? Look, I don't expect Shane to like this game any more than people can expect me to like something like StarCraft. Sure, I could try to convince people that this game is badly designed, but the reality is that would be unfair to StarCraft fans because it is a well-made game. It's just something that I don't enjoy, and it's not the kind of games that I like to see from Blizzard. Likewise, a lot of people wanted a real sequel to Star Fox 64, but after all that waiting, got this instead. It's kind of like waiting 5 years for a new Mario game, only to then get an RPG spin-off or party game instead. I don't blame the fans in this situation. This is Nintendo's fault, due to their short-sightedness and disconnect with their fan base. But the fans aren't completely blameless here. Because of the huge backlash and criticisms, Nintendo has been given the impression that we only want a space shooter from this franchise and nothing else. Imagine if the same thing happened to Mario games or any other franchise for that matter. We would have never gotten the party games, the card series, and the imaginative paper installments. And now, after all that, Nintendo will never expand on this franchise ever again, all because of us, the fans. And yet, for some strange reason, even after we have gotten several new main series installments in the Star Fox franchise, people still feel very bitter about this game. Some are even strangely more volatile to this game than to obviously terrible titles like Superman 64 and Sonic 06. This is why I know there's more to it than what certain fans are saying. The negative criticisms for this game are all over the place. It's almost as if they are only trying to criticize the game for the sake of criticism itself. Another channel called Really Freaking Clever complained about how there are two plot lines that don't complement each other, saying something like how collecting the spellstones to save the planet are not connected to the Krazoa spirits that you all of a sudden also have to find. But the story makes it clear that the spellstones were created by the Krazoa spirits to prevent the planet from splitting apart. Crystal, the first character you play as, goes on the mission to find these spirits, and although she manages to save one, unfortunately, she gets trapped inside a giant crystal. Oh, I see what they did there. Fox McCloud, whilst searching for the 4 spellstones, is visited by that same spirit that Crystal freed, and tells him to finish what she started. And for good reason too, because although the stones keep the planet from tearing itself apart, the ones that created these spellstones are the ones that will actually bring the chunks of the planet back together again. Saying that these two elements are not connected at all almost feels like very dry sarcasm. I can't take it seriously. Another complaint was that of being a lack of enemies, and while it is true that there are less enemies in this game than there are in some of Rare's previous titles, StarFox Adventures, however, didn't overuse them. Heck, the combat isn't even the main focus here. Thank goodness. For instance, at one point in the game you come across some T-Rexes. How many do you encounter in the entire game? 4. Although it is true that you encounter the main villain's henchmen a couple of dozen times, there are different versions of them with varying degrees of difficulty and skills. But much of the game is spent on puzzle solving and exploration, and I appreciate that Rare didn't have to resort to color swapping to give the illusion of variety. When you saw a new enemy, it was a new enemy in every sense. But I don't just disagree with Josh with the negative aspects of his review, but also his positives. You see, I don't complain about reviewers that are negative to games that I like. I take issue with reviews that don't make sense to me. Josh went on to say that Star Fox is all about variety, that it is fine that Adventures contributes to the main series. I totally disagree. Adventures can only work as a spin-off game and nothing else. If this was called Star Fox 3 and promoted itself as being part of the main series, I would have a problem. Contrary to popular belief, I don't agree with a lot of opinions that some of my most favorite reviewers express. That's not why I like them. Their criticisms make sense and I am able to understand why they feel the way they feel. I did not get that with Josh's and Shane's reviews of Adventures. In my opinion, and it really is just my opinion, if you guys want a proper review of this game, go check out the review of StarFox Adventures from CGR Undertow, which, by the way, this isn't a review of someone that loves this game, but is coming from a die-hard Star Fox fan that is torn about this game. I don't agree with everything that he says, but at least I understand the problems he has with it. That being said, I would also recommend that you guys check out Re-Res and Really Freaking Clever, because after all that is said and done, these are really great channels. Shane's negative review of the original Mario Bros. Is absolutely brilliant, and like with Re-Res, Josh's Really Freaking Clever series is fantastic. I have no malice towards these two, or anyone for that matter that happens to dislike things that I like. But people's stand on how they feel about this game, strangely, is one of the most divided opinions I have ever seen. But if I can be brutally honest here, if Rare had been given the opportunity to make the exact same game, but with all the Star Fox references taken out, I truly do believe it wouldn't have received so much hate. Again, not an amazing game, but this is one of the very few examples of a game that's being crucified, all in the name of boycotting and protesting against Nintendo's abuse of this franchise. And Nintendo is still doing it, making us wait for years for a new installment, and when it finally comes, they put in mechanics that nobody wanted, gimmicks that don't make the experience any better. But I'm just gonna stop there because this is another issue entirely.